Discover the incredible journey of a boy who transformed heartbreak into amazing self-discovery. Ethan stood at the edge of the world he once knew, a mere shadow of his former self. His parents' divorce had ripped through his life like a terrible storm, leaving only wreckage in its wake. The walls of the high school felt like prison bars, stifling him with the sound of laughter and the chaos of teenage lives that somehow moved on. He moved through the halls with his head down, a ghost drifting past bright faces and cheery conversations. Who would notice the boy silently crumbling inside? His mother worked double shifts at the local diner, and his father had escaped, leaving Ethan to navigate this new reality alone. It was in this haze of despair that he sought refuge in his grandmother's attic, searching for something, anything, to tether his fraying sanity. He stumbled upon a dusty box, its contents shrouded in layers of neglect. Inside, he found letters and photographs, forgotten pieces of his family's legacy, overflowing with stories of his grandparents, two artists whose lives had once danced with color and passion. As he flipped through the echoes of their vibrant past, a flicker ignited within him, an unquenchable thirst for self-expression tumbling forth in a rush. Could he, too, make something of his heartache? But as he picked up his old paintbrush after years of neglect, a sense of disagreement clamped down on him like a vice. His peers roamed freely in the world and derided anything that strayed from their narrow views of success. They saw him as foolish, their dismissive laughter bubbling up when he attempted to share his art. He could feel their eyes roll, hear their snickers echoing in his mind, mixing with his own doubts. Each taunt stung, igniting a boiling anger within him. The struggle between wanting to create and fearing ridicule became a battleground, one that left him breathless and uncertain. Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system, and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. With each brushstroke, Ethan confronted not only his peers, but a deeper sense of inadequacy that lingered like a fog. His art grew chaotic, channels of emotion, each canvas both an escape and a mirror reflecting his pain. Life outside offered little assurance. He needed to prove more than his competence. He needed validation, to resurrect a sense of belonging in a family dynamic stripped of support. Yet the weight of expectations hung over him like a dark cloud. The night of his exhibit loomed, a culmination of his artistic evolution, yet layered with despair. Would his mother see the boy beneath the sculpture of paint and canvas? Would his father, now a distant ghost, realize how far Ethan had come, despite his absence? Surrounded by mingling families, Ethan stood before a powerful canvas, heart racing in uncertainty and hope, contemplating whether he was ready to finally share himself, not just the art, but the boy beneath. In that crowd, he searched for a face that could validate his journey. But as people began to arrive, a familiar figure silhouette emerged, both a symbol of hope and danger. As the exhibit began, Ethan held his breath, the night stretching in front of him, pregnant with unanswered questions and the persistent echo of who he truly was. Ethan stood before the canvas, each breath heavier than the last. The familiar silhouette cutting through the crowd was unmistakable. His father had come. In that moment, a rush of conflicting emotions surged within him. Fear, hope, resentment, and longing all clashed in a storm of uncertainty. As the exhibit began, he felt lost among the gathering whispers, laughter, and movement, each sound muffling his resolve. He clenched his fists and shifted his weight from one foot to the other, his heart thudding painfully as the crowd began to admire his work. "Look at that one," a girl said, her voice laced with genuine admiration. "It's powerful." Ethan glanced toward the painting she studied. It was the piece that had emerged during his most painful days, a riot of colors layered thick with his emotions, displaying the chaotic culmination of his internal struggle. Notifications of interest buzzed delicately around him, but they felt distant and surreal, like watching a film unfold rather than experiencing it firsthand. All he could perceive was his father, trapped in a bubble of vulnerability across the room, looking at him with an expression that blended pride and hesitation. Their eyes met for a fleeting moment, and Ethan felt an electric jolt. Could this be the moment of reconciliation he secretly longed to achieve? The crowd continued to ebb and flow, but it felt as if time slowed down as he approached the painting. It was as though the colors had come alive, desperately trying to communicate the turbulence he had wrapped them in. Ethan questioned if his father could see the reflection of his pain in those strokes, the frustration that had given birth to his art. But with every passing second, doubt clawed at him. What if this was only another chance for disappointment? What if his father didn't understand? Ethan wrestled with vulnerability, wanting to share the depths of his growth, but terrified it would be dismissed or belittled yet again. A lump formed in his throat as he wrestled with whether to approach his father or continue hiding in the shadows of the gallery. The art world around him buzzed with energy, but all he felt was a suffocating weight pressing down on his chest. More than fear of judgment floated in his mind. He harbored a yearning for approval and validation that had been absent for so long. What could one conversation with his father unravel? Could it shatter the distance or deepen the chasm between them? Ethan! His name echoed through the gallery, and he turned to find his mother, her eyes glistening with pride. "You did this! Look how amazing it is!" Her affirmation struck a chord deep within him, lighting a small flame of courage. He took a step toward her, heart racing with hope as she gestured toward his father. The connection between them was tangible, a bridge formed from the threads of shared struggle. But as he gathered resolve to stride forward, a sharp intake of breath reminded him of the stakes, a single decision looming over him. Would he allow fear to stifle this moment? Or could he uncork the simmering emotions and confront the man who had left him in the dark? Ethan turned back toward the vibrant colors before him, realizing they embodied his resilience. He took a deep breath, the air filling with possibility. The time had come to face the most formidable canvas of all, his own lineage, his family, and ultimately himself. With renewed determination, he made his way toward his father. The weight of his artistic journey burgeoned into something much larger, a search for authentic connection. But as he approached cautiously, uncertainty still loomed over the horizon, and the question hung in the air. Would he be met with understanding or rejection? Ethan navigated the crowd, each step deliberate yet hesitant, his heart pounding out a rhythm that interwove with the ambient murmur of admiration surrounding him. The vivid colors on his canvas seemed to pulse with life, a reflection of his inner turmoil, and he clenched his jaw, reminding himself why he had come to this pivotal moment. The possibility of acceptance swirled around him, battling the shadow of disappointment that had hung over their relationship for far too long. His father stood there, transfixed by the painting, the pride in his eyes mixed with an unspoken apology that sent Ethan reeling. This was the moment that could either fracture their connection further or weave it with newfound understanding. He fought against the instinct to retreat into the safety of anonymity among the gallery spectators, and reminded himself of every sleepless night spent wrestling with brushes and canvas, every meticulously crafted stroke siphoned from depths of despair and triumph alike. As he finally closed the distance, the crowd became a backdrop. His father's gaze remained fixed on the piece before him, searching, perhaps probing. The ache in Ethan's chest blossomed into a visceral need for dialogue. Yet he wondered if words were even necessary. Would a single glance convey his story, or would silence remain the more comfortable route? Just as he opened his mouth to speak, his father turned, an intense scrutiny clouding his expression. "Ethan." "Dad." Each syllable echoed with an undertone of both formality and a longing for connection. They stood in a tight theater of emotions, the standout piece between them serving as a buffer, yet also a bridge. Ethan's fear flared momentarily, but he steadied it with the sharp realization that the art reflected not just his journey, but the remnants of their fractured bond. His father inhaled sharply, breaking the silence that stretched painfully. "This is amazing. I didn't realize." He hesitated, rationalization shimmering in the air. "I didn't know you felt this way." Ethan felt exposed, yet invigorated by the revelation that his father was unearthing a buried truth. "It's not just art for me, Dad. It's therapy. It's how I processed everything." The words spilled out, fueled by years of pent-up emotion, enriching his resolve as he wrestled with the man who had burdened him with so much uncertainty for so long. "Processed?" his father asked, genuine curiosity mingling with confusion. The dialogue transformed, taking on a life of its own. The conversation danced around pain, regret, and understanding, shifting from tenuous to deeper, revealing the cracks that had long defined their relationship. They discussed artistry, pain, and the distance time had created. Yet in that moment, Ethan felt the burden begin to lift. He saw not just the father who had walked away, but a human being wrestling with his own battles. As Ethan delved into his experiences, his fears began to transform into a beacon of newfound determination. He discovered his hidden talent not only for traditional art, but for forging dialogue, for inviting connection where barriers had once feasted. They exchanged stories, their conversations gradually opening a reservoir of empathy hidden beneath the pain. And for the first time, Ethan realized that vulnerability could elicit strength and the promise of reconciliation. As the exhibit continued behind him, Ethan looked at his father and found surprise illuminating his expression. Had he seen beyond the canvas? Had he gleaned the depth of his son's struggles, the grit it took to turn heartbreak into art? Yet, before Ethan could fully comprehend how monumental this moment could be for their future, there lingered an unspoken question in the air. Would they be able to unravel their history together and chart a new journey? Or was this a fleeting glimpse of understanding that would dissipate once the artwork fell silent? And just as his father opened his mouth to respond, the crowd erupted in applause for a different piece, drowning out whatever hope hung in the air. Ethan felt the tension twist, the moment almost slipping away. What would he do next? Ethan could feel the weight of time and anticipation pressing in on him, the applause vibrating through his bones. As the crowd cheered for the artist of the other piece, he sensed that this was a pivotal moment, fraught with potential and uncertainty. His father's gaze shifted slightly, a frown creasing his forehead as though wrestling with unspoken thoughts. It was then that Ethan realized the importance of this confrontation extended beyond his own needs. It was equally critical for his father. The conversation was more than an extension of words. It was a chance to bridge the chasm that had divided them for so long. With every heartbeat echoing in his ears, he drew a breath, grounding himself in this shared experience. "Dad," he started, his voice steadier than he expected, "what did you mean when you said you didn't know I felt this way?" The question dangled between them, crystalline and charged, begging for a real exchange rather than a glossing over of feelings. His father hesitated, his eyes searching Ethan's face, as if looking for solid ground. "I'd always," he faltered, the thought trailing off, a vulnerability surfacing that Ethan hadn't encountered before. "I thought I had given you everything you needed, but maybe I was wrong." Ethan felt a ripple of shock and warmth wash over him. "It's about more than things, Dad. It's about being there, really being there. I often felt alone, even when you were physically present." The truth tumbled out, charged with years of unmet expectations and the silence that had grown louder between them. The crowd continued to cheer, Yet in this small bubble of clarity, it faded to background noise, leaving only the two of them in a dance of emotions. His father ran a hand through his hair, a familiar gesture signaling conflict, frustration, and contemplation. "I didn't realize how distant I had become, Ethan. I thought if I could give you a good life, you would be okay." Ethan wanted to scream that the facade of success meant nothing without emotional support, but he swallowed that impulse. Instead, he listened to the revelation unfolding in his father's voice, recognizing that buried under years of stoic pretenses lay a father struggling with his own insecurities. "We both made mistakes, Dad," he said softly, acknowledging the shared pain that filled the air. "But we still have a chance to change that." As they faced each other, something shifted in the atmosphere. An understanding that would take work, yes, but also a willingness to confront the past and redefine their future. With newfound determination, Ethan leaned into the conversation, asking questions that had always lingered unspoken. "Could we start to explore this together? I want to share my process, my art. Maybe it's a way for us to reconnect." His father's expression softened further, the walls of resistance cracking as a flicker of hope ignited in his eyes. "I'd like that. I'd like to understand what you see in your work." Ethan marveled at the moment unfolding, how layers of silence and misunderstanding were beginning to peel away. This was no longer just about his artistic ambitions. It was about healing and transformation, a dual journey. Just as the momentum built around them, a figure brushed past, drawing Ethan's attention to a woman with eyes locked on him. She was familiar, a critic known for her discerning palate in the art world. In that instant, he recognized an opportunity not merely for acceptance, but for validation, both from his father and a wider audience. His heart raced as he caught her gaze, feeling a pulse of energy coursing through him. She was drawn to the story behind the canvas. Yet he had to choose. Would he seize this moment to impress her or focus on the burgeoning relationship with his father? The dilemma clawed at his insides, forcing him to confront the nature of his priorities. Would this newfound connection hold more weight than external validation? As he wrestled with the decision, Ethan sensed that this was more than an artistic choice. It was a defining moment in his growth. With determination tightening his jaw, he turned back to his father, ready for the next phase of their conversation. But a small voice inside whispered a single truth: the path of growth was never straightforward. For the first time, the forks in the road didn't unsettle him. They invigorated him. But could he truly balance both his ambitions and this nascent relationship? The future loomed ahead, uncertain yet enticing, as he prepared to make a choice that would shape his next steps. Ethan's gaze shifted back and forth between the critic and his father as the world around him unfurled into a whirlwind of ambition and connection. The deep yearning for recognition collided violently with the need for familial understanding. He felt the pressure of that moment tighten around his chest, squeezing out rational thought, forcing him to confront the complexities of his heart. His father's tentative nod and hopeful expression created a safe harbor. Yet the critic's piercing eyes ignited an intense fire within him. This situation morphed into a tightrope walk. He couldn't let the chance for validation slip away, but he also recognized that genuine connection with his father could lead to more profound artistic exploration, a chance to present his true self. What was worth more, the acclaim from an audience or the closeness that could finally heal old wounds? "What should I do?" he silently questioned himself while pretending to listen to his father recount fleeting memories of his childhood, moments that neither had truly shared. Ethan captured fragments of understanding in those recollections, shadows flickering behind the barriers they had both erected over the years. Memories ignited his resolve. He wanted to share his art not only to express himself, but to involve his father in a world that had previously felt closed off. "Dad," he interrupted gently, "let's take this further. Let's explore together. Maybe I can illustrate my journey through the brush." The words tumbled out, fueled by a desire to nurture this connection, to guide his father through his world, to make him see. "I want my art to mean something to you." His father's brow furrowed, with intrigue paired with apprehension. This was a shift Ethan could sense. The beginnings of a different dynamic between them. Yet a counterpoint emerged. An insatiable hunger for recognition beyond familial support clawed at Ethan's insides. "Perhaps she could elevate my work into something more than personal," he thought, even as his instincts urged him to release that tether. The critic took a step closer, a slight smile playing on her lips as if recognizing the intricate dance between fathers and sons, the palpable tension, floaty yet real. "What are you working on?" she inquired, her voice lilting through the noise. Ethan's heart raced at the prospect of this sudden engagement. He battled between his father, the raw honesty pouring from him like molten clay, and the critic who represented the gateway to opportunities he had dreamed of but feared as well. He either had to take a leap into the art world or root himself deeper in the soil of familial connection. Yet every moment he hesitated felt like a betrayal, a fracture of the bond he was trying to mend. The art of storytelling through visuals had always been his escape. The very act of painting was both personal and universal. He envisioned a series that spoke not only of his trauma, but reflected the resilience shared among many. This was a thread of humanity craved by countless others, but would he be courageous enough to share that vulnerability? "I have something that embodies this struggle," Ethan finally asserted, turning to the critic, "an exploration of isolation and the longing for connection." His heart thrummed wildly in anticipation of her response, the thrill of exposing his truest self wrapping around him like a powerful embrace. His father's eyes glimmered with a mix of pride and concern, and perhaps in that moment he understood the intricate narrative his son was weaving. The question hovered in the air, a delicate balance of hope and trepidation. Could this be the bridge that connected the splintered pieces of their relationship? Ethan could feel the stage stretching ahead, ready for his next leap. This moment held more power than he had anticipated. Yet suddenly uncertainty cloaked him, inviting a familiar flood of self-doubt. He still remained rooted in the throes of two opposing narratives, validation or connection. With palpable urgency, he had to make his choice before the moment slipped away. But the echoes of his deepest fears rose with freshness and clarity. Could vulnerability outshine ambition, or would he shatter the fragile bond he was attempting to restore? The critic's gaze remained fixed, a challenge of sorts laid before him. But deeper in his heart, a quiet whisper emerged. The truth remained. Could he marry his inner artist with the role of son with aspirations, fostering a path forged from both expression and care? Only the next step would unveil the answer, as the weight of the decision bore down on him more than any brushstroke or canvas ever could. Ethan stood at the precipice of decision, the air thick with anticipation and vulnerability. Both the critic and his father seemed to hold their collective breath, waiting for him to unveil the truth buried within his art. He could feel their expectations pressing upon him, a heavy mantle of ambition from the critic, a soft plea for connection from his father. How could he tether his deepest yearnings into one coherent thread? The critic tilted her head, her eyes assessing the shifting layers of his emotions. In that moment, Ethan realized that his art was more than just an expression. It was the essence of his very being, marred by past traumas, yet emboldened by a desire for connection. The paintbrush felt like an extension of his soul, a key to unlock the hidden chambers of his heart. Could he use that key now to merge both worlds? For a brief instant, a vision unfurled in his mind. The canvas transformed before his eyes into a tapestry of vibrant colors reflecting his turmoil and longing, every brushstroke painting a shared experience between him and his father. He realized that the act of creation was not merely a solitary endeavor. It had the potential to forge bonds and heal wounds. This revelation sparked a courageous flame within him, illuminating the shadows of doubt that had long lingered. "Art is about connection," he blurted out, almost defiantly. "I want to draw the pain and isolation I felt, but also the hope and the journey of understanding. I want to bring you with me, Dad." His voice, a mixture of raw vulnerability and fierce determination, caught both of their attention. His father's expression softened further, shaping a mirror of Ethan's own internal struggle. A man grappling with his past, yearning to grasp the bridge to his son's present. The critic's interest piqued, and she leaned closer, eager for details. "What do you need to do to get there?" she asked, her tone both probing and encouraging. The question hung heavily in the room, yet it felt like a lifeline thrown into turbulent waters, urging him to explore deeper. He knew he had to sketch out the narrative that would guide him, an act of committing to his artistic voice while inviting his father to walk alongside him. Ethan contemplated those sketches, the faces and experiences of past relationships, both fleeting and lasting. They created a visual map of his disjointed feelings, a testament to a life not yet fully understood. "I need to start with my personal story, my battles with isolation, my attempts to connect, and how those moments have shaped who I am." His heart raced with the weight of those words. They were laden with a truth that resonated deeply. The act of creation was inherently vulnerable. It sometimes required stripping away layers, revealing the raw essence within. "What will you do next?" the critic probed, her eyes narrowing with potential. Ethan could feel the flicker of adrenaline, a growing commitment gathering strength within him. He knew that he would engage fully, with his art, with his father, and, importantly, with himself. Of once craving acceptance collided with the realization that his insecurities could ignite the flame of genuine expression. He envisioned the gallery of his mind, a place where vulnerability met visibility. "I'll create my series," he declared, the determination crystallizing into reality. "Each painting will tell part of my journey, from darkness to light. And I want you to be part of that process, Dad. Your memories can help me see it more clearly." The proud smile creeping across his father's face ignited something profound inside Ethan, a sense of belonging entwined with ambition. There were promises of revelations waiting to dance upon the canvas, stories yearning for release. In that instant, the critic and his father existed not as divergent paths, but as invaluable allies in his artistic ascent. Yet uncertainty still danced on the periphery of his mind. What if the work revealed more than he intended? What if the truth overwhelmed them both? And was he truly ready to confront the depths of his own vulnerability while opening this door? With every question, the stakes climbed higher, fueling a potent mix of excitement and fear. As if tethered to invisible strings, the pull of external affirmation and internal acceptance spiraled into a maelstrom of possibility. Ethan turned back to face the critic, resolution punctuating his stance. "I'm ready to begin, but everyone should know that the beginning devours the comfort of the familiar. In order to grow, I must do the unthinkable." The buzz of the cafe flared back into focus, life cascading around him, each voice and laugh amplifying his newfound convictions. Ethan felt a strange sensation wash over him, a sense of freedom coupled with apprehension. An uncharted path lay ahead. All he had to do was take that first step. But could he dare to show the pieces of himself he long had kept hidden, not just to a fickle audience, but to those who mattered most? The moment for revelation loomed ominously ahead, the delicate balance of risk and reward poised to reshape everything he knew. The artist stood prepared for the plunge, though the question lingered, haunting yet clarifying. Would exposing his vulnerabilities finally shatter his isolation? Or would it plunge him deeper into a void he had fought to escape? Ethan returned home, nerves electrified with possibility, but the weight of expectation wrapped around him like a heavy cloak. His father's encouragement echoed in his mind, and the critic's probing gaze ignited a fire of ambition within him. He was no longer an artist floundering in uncertainty. He was a creator on the brink of a personal odyssey, prepared to confront the ghosts of his past and emerge anew. In the solitude of his small studio, he stood before a blank canvas, an expansive, intimidating expanse of white that mirrored the uncharted territory of his emotions. He picked up his brushes, his heart racing, teetering between fear and excitement. Each instrument felt both familiar and foreign, a reminder of past battles fought on the canvas, and a promise of untold stories yearning for release. He let out a slow breath, closing his eyes for a moment. His thoughts drifted to the painful isolation he had experienced. Images of strangers in crowded rooms, laughter ringing in his ears yet feeling achingly distant, flooded his mind. Those moments of disconnect were to be his first strokes, the genesis of a collection that would speak truths he had long concealed. As he dipped his brush in paint, he hesitated. The fear of revealing too much clawed at him, whispering doubts about what lies beneath the surface. Was he ready to paint the agony of unspoken words and the heaviness of longing? Could he endure the vulnerability that came with such raw truth? With each hesitation, he realized that this was part of the very fabric of his artistic journey. The push and pull of emotion would drive his hand. The first stroke hit the canvas, anchoring his initial thoughts. Swirling dark hues bled into one another, a fundamental representation of his isolation. Despite the visceral nature of his creation, there was a sense of unease as he stood back, viewing the emerging chaos. The painting was too personal, too tangled, reflecting a fractured self. Yet, beneath that turmoil, flickers of lighter colors began weaving through, hints of the hope he wished to communicate. Ethan rubbed his temples, frustration brewing. While he embraced the idea of connection through art, translating that connection into reality felt daunting. Painting felt like exposing a raw nerve, a risk he now had to navigate alone, despite his father's promise to support him. And yet there was a growing conviction that he needed to press on. This moment of creative strife was a necessary confrontation with his own fears. He sought guidance from his father. A shared dialogue might ground his artistic expression and provide necessary context. Leaning on another's memories could help weave insights into his art, creating a symbiotic connection between their experiences. The thought bolstered his resolve. Ethan reached for his phone, his fingers trembling slightly. A message beckoned on the screen, reminding him of the critic's advice. Art is about connection. Maybe it was time to combine his narrative with his father's past. The idea electrified him. Envisioning collaborative sessions filled with stories of resilience and shared vulnerabilities, he feared this bond would force them both to confront their truths. As he anxiously pressed send, he weighed the profound consequences of that step. Was he prepared for his father to unearth long-dormant memories? Would those discussions enhance or complicate his artistic vision? The implications of their collaboration rushed over him like a tidal wave of emotion. While the uncertainty loomed large, so did an exhilarating sense of freedom. In this moment, he recognized that art was not merely an escape, but a vessel through which they could face their realities together. Would their exchanges lead to deeper understandings, healing long-standing wounds, or would it drive them further apart? Ethan felt a strange kinship with his canvas, and a new resolve took shape within him. He had taken the first step toward a journey of self-discovery, replete with its promises of change, challenge, and creative honesty. But as he awaited his father's response, a thought lingered. Had he just opened a floodgate of hidden truths? The moment of commitment had arrived, and with it came the realization that revealing oneself could reshape not only his art, but those relationships that meant everything. The hours stretched into a taut silence as Ethan waited. Time felt warped in his small studio. Each ticking second a reminder of his anticipation and fear. His phone lay on the table like a dormant beast, its screen reflecting the weight of his choices. The prospect of his father's reply loomed heavily. Would it be an affirmation of their shared journey, or an unsettling unearthing of years edged with silence? Drawing strength from the chaos around him, Ethan forced his focus back to the canvas. The dark colors began to feel more like a familiar embrace than an impenetrable void. With a new attitude, he picked up the brush once more, each stroke coming with a sense of urgency as he channeled the tension into vibrant whirls of emotion. He wasn't just painting, he was transforming his tumult into tangible form, letting each stroke elucidate that isolation could birth beauty when confronted rather than avoided. As he worked, the duality of his existence emerged on the canvas. Chaos mingled with fragments of light, a dance of shadow and clarity that mirrored his internal struggle. He realized then that vulnerability could be his greatest ally. The act of creating became a statement, a form of catharsis and connection not just with himself, but with every onlooker who would one day decipher his depths. But just as he lost himself in his art, a relentless tide of doubt surged back, crashing over him. What if his father was unwilling or unable to confront his past? The prospect of shared discovery suddenly seemed less like a bridge and more like a chasm. Could those shared memories unlock their histories, or would they reveal truths better left buried? Just when he contemplated stopping, a notification pinged from his phone. A single message from his father illuminated the screen. With trepidation mixing with cautious excitement, he leaned forward, reading the words as if they held the very essence of their future. His father had expressed eagerness to collaborate, but his words also hinted at old wounds, hints of memories that had haunted him. That brought a fresh flood of emotion, fear, excitement, and undeniable urge to dive deeper into a wellspring of both joy and pain. Ethan stepped back from the canvas and exhaled sharply. This was the moment. The prospect of delving into their shared yet fractured history was both electrifying and terrifying. A wave of clarity washed over him. Perhaps the process wasn't solely about art, but about healing, about unearthing the buried truths that held them captive for so long. He pondered the implications of this endeavor. Art, in its truest essence, could be the linchpin for empathy and understanding. It could serve as a dialogue, his strokes giving voice to unspoken sentiments, while his father's stories could provide the context to navigate through the maze of their experiences. They weren't just reconnecting as artist and subject, they were set to navigate the tumultuous waters of their bond. Fueled by resolve, Ethan began marking the commit points for their collaboration in his sketchbook. His hand moved instinctively, notes jotted down like threads weaving his thoughts into a broader narrative. He envisioned shared conversations, his father recounting pieces of his past while he painted the visceral emotions that erupted from those stories. Yet, alongside this excitement was a gnawing dread. Would the encounter drag them into deep-seated grievances? Would the authenticity of their shared vulnerability tear them apart as much as it knitted them together? As he turned to find a reference for a new painting, a sudden wave of realization washed over him. This journey was not just about discovering his father's past, but more about claiming his own story. His art was the gateway, a tapestry woven from fractures that needed healing. Returning to the canvas, Ethan's brush danced more freely than ever, emboldened by the vision of facing the unknown together. With each stroke, he gave form to the hope that had been lurking in the edges of his consciousness, that perhaps, through their collaboration, they would not only illuminate his father's struggles, but redefine their relationship in the process. Ethan felt the urgency in his pulse quickening, knowing that soon they would need to face the raw truths that could shatter or solidify their connection. Was he ready for the emotional whirlwind about to unfold? As the palette burst into life, he prepared himself for what lay ahead, instinctively aware that this was merely the beginning of a deeper exploration into themselves. The moment of reckoning churned within him. The time had come to face not only his father's buried past, but also the shadows cast by his own. A collision of personal histories about to unravel with fervent intensity. Ethan stared at the canvas, now a chaos of colors reflecting his inner turmoil, trembling between hope and fear. Each brushstroke felt desperate, embodying the anticipation of the conversation that loomed ahead. The weight of his father's message wrapped around him, yet instead of immobilizing him, it spurred a reckoning. He recognized this moment as a fulcrum upon which the balance of their relationship could pivot. In preparing for this conversation, Ethan needed to equip himself with more than just paint and canvas. He flipped open his sketchbook, its pages a chaotic reflection of his evolving thoughts. Here lay a roadmap, an exploration of familial bonds interlaced with emotional scars, personal ambitions haunted by unspoken truths, doodles of shared laughter alongside scribbles of tense memories mapped out a landscape where he had long avoided traversing. It suddenly became crucial to formulate the right questions to guide the dialogue with his father. Would he ask about the pivotal moments that forged silence between them? Would he dare to uncover the emotions buried beneath the dust of years? Ethan felt an electric surge of courage igniting within him, but it was tainted with a deep-seated doubt. What if the conversation spiraled into a confrontation instead of a collaboration? Questions spun through his mind, ushering in anxiety. Could he remain composed as his father recounted painful memories? What if the exchange opened up wounds they were both ill-equipped to heal? These considerations served as roots wrapping themselves around his resolve, tugging at the fabric of his determination. As he prepared for the encounter, Ethan moved through the motions of mixing colors, loosening the tightness in his chest. He became acutely aware of the weight of the brush in his hand. A tool for creating, yes, but also a symbolic weapon in the battle against the past, a shield while navigating the choppy waters of vulnerability. Firing off a few rapid strokes, he invoked an image, dark clouds looming but painted with streaks of gold. It resonated with the shifting tone of their relationship, a reminder that light could penetrate darkness if a person dared to uncover it. His father's struggles could become the basis for a tapestry of understanding, one that could redefine not just their bond, but Ethan's own identity. As intensity swirled within, leading him to question the depth of his own courage, he hesitated to imagine the next step. What should he say? What would he need from his father in order to move forward, not just as an artist, but as a man ready to confront his lineage? Ethan sighed, the sound reverberating in the small studio. He understood that every masterpiece emerges from chaos. Like his life, this collaboration with his father needed to be an art form itself. If they were truly to transform hurt into healing, they would have to embrace the turbulence of raw emotions. Moments turned into hours as Ethan analyzed his painted reflection. The more he painted, the more he confronted the interplay of light against shadow, both within himself and in the impending dialogue. As he approached the final touches, urgency and a fierce tenderness coursed through him. Suddenly, the phone buzzed again, jolting him from his thoughts. Familiar dread gnawed at his stomach as he reached for it, half expecting a sudden call or text from his father, interrupting his inner reverie. But it was a simple notification, one that pulled him away from the moment. Another reminder that the waiting was part of the process, a necessary evolution he needed to embrace. His heart raced as he glanced over his work, an abstract reflection of the very journey ahead. Each chaotic brushstroke mirrored his fragmented understanding, but it was the promise of wholeness that drove him. Slowly, he realized he was not just ready, he was determined to step into this. Uncertain future. The moment of truth was imminent. With resolve knitting itself into every fiber of his being, Ethan leaned back, catching his breath, ready to confront the shadows both he and his father cast. The clarity was exhilarating. Now it was a matter of stepping forward into the emotional whirlwind that awaited them and discovering what lay buried beneath the surface. But would he find the courage to unveil the hidden depths of their shared history, or would he retreat into the safety of silence once more? Ethan stood in front of his newly transformed canvas, a vibrant array of colors and emotions pulsating with life, symbolizing his struggle and triumph. He felt a shift within himself, an arduous journey of self-discovery that had finally led him here, standing tall in the face of his past. The previous days of anxiety morphed into something tangible. His fears, once suffocating, had become stepping stones toward profound personal revelation. Days had passed since he first reached out to his father, but now a new resonance filled the air, a determination, a vibrant sense of purpose. The blend of solitude and collaboration shed light on the healing they both desperately needed. His studio, once a cocoon of doubts and insecurities, now echoed with a promise of newfound connection. Each brushstroke he added became not just an act of creation, but a reflection of everything he had once contained in silence. When his father finally arrived for their scheduled discussion, the atmosphere felt electric. As Ethan adjusted the canvases leaning against the walls, each image told a fragment of his truth. The world beyond his studio felt distant. What mattered now was the shared vulnerability that could redefine his family. "Hey, Dad," he greeted, half nervous, half excited. The warmth in his father's smile contrasted sharply with the shadows that had loomed over their relationship. "I can see you've been busy," he said, admiring the artwork that danced across the walls, each piece a mark of emotional labor and resilience. "It's all part of what I want to share with you," Ethan replied, gesturing towards the paintings. "I want to explore how our stories can weave together, how your experiences can illuminate my art." His father's brow furrowed slightly, but there was curiosity mingling with trepidation. "What do you mean?" Ethan swallowed hard, summoning the courage he had nurtured in the solitude of his studio. "For so long, I felt lost. I've poured everything into my art because it was my way of processing the loneliness we faced. But now I realize how crucial it is to dive deeper, to confront our shared history." An openness began to unfold in the interaction, as if a barrier was being dismantled bite by bite. As Ethan described pivotal moments from his childhood, the laughter intertwined with heartache, the echoes of silence, they took form, revealing the fractures in their past. His father listened intently, and in those moments, Ethan felt a flicker of empathy, a shared understanding. "Ethan, I never meant to make you feel alone," his father finally said, voice thick with regret and realization. "I thought providing for you would be enough, but I see now how much I failed to bridge the emotional gap." "I know," Ethan replied gently, "but being honest about it is vital. There's so much we can do together to mend what's been broken. I want you to feel free to share your perspective too." And just like that, his father began recounting his own memories, the struggles of uncertainty that accompanied the divorce, and how he, too, had been grappling with feelings of inadequacy and loss. Each story exchanged added layers to their evolving relationship, transforming the tension into collaboration, into commitment, into renewed hope. The hurdles of the past didn't dissolve instantly, but with each word they built a bridge across the chasm. They talked for hours about nostalgia, pain, regrets, and aspirations, each recounting bringing them closer, painting a more expansive tableau of understanding. Through their liberating conversation, Ethan realized that vulnerability didn't strip away strength, but rather showcased an incredible resilience. The very act of exploration through their dialogues allowed him to relinquish long-held insecurities. The healing journey through art and connection began reshaping definitions of masculinity and personal achievement. Ethan embraced his artwork, now understanding it as more than its surface value. It was the roar of voices interwoven into a collective heartbeat. He conquered fears with every shared detail, proving that opening up didn't mean surrendering to weakness. It meant soaring into authenticity. Days turned into weeks, and together they worked on a collaborative piece that blended the nuances of their experiences, intertwining his father's memories with Ethan's artistic vision. It was unsolicited healing, manifested through paint and understanding, a visual tapestry that resonated families, fathers, and sons. On the night of the gallery exhibit for their joint artwork, the atmosphere crackled with promise. People gathered, admiring the juxtaposition of vibrant brushstrokes that revealed not just the beauty emerging from darkness, but the shared recovery between a father and son. In that moment, standing before the sea of art enthusiasts, surrounded by the warmth of recognition, Ethan felt a swell of achievement unlike any other. It wasn't merely about the accolades or applause. It was about the internal transformation he had achieved through the journeys they navigated together. He had emerged as an individual fully capable of embracing both vulnerability and strength, painting his life story with bold strokes of resilience. Eyeing the enthusiastic expressions of those around him fortified Evan's belief that overcoming personal challenges mattered more than anticipated external validations. True acceptance began within, through art, legacy, and understanding of self. As the night wrapped around him, surrounded by newfound vulnerabilities and shared memories, he turned to his father, grateful for this moment of togetherness. "Thank you," Ethan whispered, the weight of unspoken words finally finding flight. And his father, eyes shimmering with unspoken pride, responded simply, "We did this together." The echoes of their laughter and emotional engagement intertwined with the applause of the audience, marking a new beginning, one where both Ethan and his father had redefined themselves, not just as artist and subject, but as united souls embarking on a refreshing chapter unencumbered by the past. This was the moment when Ethan realized he had yet to truly embrace his greatest achievement, becoming a man who could bridge the gap between past shadows and the illuminating light of understanding. A man ready to share his authentic self with the world, equipped with confidence and love, finally feeling whole. Now it's your turn. Subscribe immediately to the channel to not miss the next exclusive emotional stories. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm. Your support is crucial. Comment your reactions and theories about this transformation. We want to hear from you. Share instantly this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this conclusion. Don't wait even one more second. True fans of personal overcoming stories understand the importance of supporting the channel through these actions.